Do you wish that all things wealth and finance were much easier to understand and not presented by a bunch of beige cardigan-wearing geeks? Welcome to the Clever Investor Podcast, where we're dishing up the easiest to understand finance program served in bite-sized chunks, so your brain will thank you as your knowledge grows. Hosted by the brilliant Owen Taylor, a multiple award-winning expert with a glorious knack for explaining the complex world of wealth in the simplest of ways.
Hey, clever investors, and welcome back to another show. Today, we're looking at the 9 top tips for new property investors. Tip number 1, have a plan. Yes, sounds really basic, but this is absolutely the first thing you need to do. You've got to treat this investing just as if you're starting your own business, which in a sense, that's exactly what you're doing. There's an old saying of people that fail to prepare are preparing to fail. And it's so true. If you're fortunate enough to already be in business for yourself, you know the importance of having a business plan. Well, it's the same thing when you're investing in property as well. You need to set out what your goals are from the beginning. And like every single good plan, it's going to be flexible. It will change over time. You'll need to reevaluate things. Imagine going out to play sport and not having a game plan. I mean, all the top footy teams, all the top hockey teams have a coach and a plan beforehand. And that's exactly what you need as well. Tip number 2, know your numbers. Did a whole episode on this as well. And there's so much more to know about it. But the reason why a lot of people get themselves into hot water and consistently stay there for a long time is they didn't understand what they were doing in the beginning with their numbers. They've got themselves into too deep, or they bought the wrong property. They've got the wrong loan. You need to know your numbers. So have a look for that previous episode. Know your numbers. Tip number 3, make sure you've got a fantastic mortgage broker. How do you know you've got a fantastic mortgage broker? Well, I speak from experience. A lot of that is often referred. So if your friends have referred this person, that's a really good start to it. Another thing is when you meet this person, interview them. They're going to be part of your team. They're going to be working for you. Ask them questions. Ask them what's their experience, how they would handle this. Have they got any other suggestions? It honestly doesn't matter how many lenders they actually have at their disposal. Don't pick one because they've got 30 lenders and the other person's only got 14 lenders. So interview them. Tell them what your plans are and how can they actually help you. And don't be scared to move on to somebody else. Tip number 4, get educated. And of course, the Clever Investor Podcast is just the starting point for your education. Avoid things though like Dr. Google. Stop trying to work things out off what the interweb's saying. And that goes the same for the media nowadays. Now, years ago, they used to have a headline because they wanted you to pick it up because the more papers they sold, the more they could charge for advertising. Same thing happens nowadays with you clicking on things and following stories through. All of this stuff is measured in the background, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But don't forget, the media needs to write something different next week than what they did the week before and the week before that. So get educated from the right people. Check their qualifications, check who they are, check what they've actually done, and check what information they're actually giving you. Tip number 5, think with your head and not your heart. This might sound really basic, but for most Australians, the experience that they've had of buying property before was when they bought an owner-occupied properties. Now, when you're buying an owner-occupied, your home, where you're going to live, where you're going to raise your family, or it's your first property you've ever bought, you're meant to fall in love with it. 100%. Absolutely. But what we can't do is take those emotions into when we're buying an investment property and planning on building a portfolio. So you got to think with your head. As I said in one of the other points, you've got to treat this as if it's a business, because it really is a business. Tip number 6, avoid negative people. Now, a lot of the people you're going to meet that have got negative stories about investing in property or borrowing money or even buying shares or Bitcoins or something probably had a really bad experience along the way. And most of that bad experience is because they failed to do step 1, which was have a plan. Avoid these people. Listen to what they've got to say. They've got a story to tell you. You might learn something, but don't take 100% of what they've got if everything they're doing is just, or everything they're saying, is just doom and gloom and negativity. Remember, you are investing for the sole purpose of having a better lifestyle into your future. Tip number 7, all good things take time. Investing in property is a long-term plan, as I've said many, many times before. And property cycles generally, as a very, very loose rule of thumb, take about maybe 7 to 10 years to actually see them kicking in. So don't be down about these things and realize that you're in this for the long haul. Go back, review what your plan was. Tip number 8, use a great property manager. Don't ever get the idea of managing the property yourself. You don't want to be disturbed by your tenant, the toilet's not flushing or the light switch is flickering in the hallway. Let your managing agent deal with that. You are, as part of your plan, going to have an absolutely fantastic property that you've invested into. Therefore, you're going to get absolutely fantastic tenants in that property. Let somebody else manage it. Let somebody else look after when you need a new tenant, when the lease needs renewing. There are some bad property managers, just like in any industry. There's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers. So again, you need to interview these people. And I'll tell you, from all the properties that I own, I have changed managing agents every now and then because they just weren't performing things the way I wanted it to actually be done. So review, look for a better option, which doesn't always mean you're going for the cheapest, but it means you're getting the best. They're worth their weight in gold. Tip number 9, the last tip I've got for you today. Reflect, review, and refocus. And you need to do that at least every 12 months. And you could do that in conjunction with sitting down with your mortgage broker to review what your loans are, and also doing all your financials with your accountant and plot out, see what things have actually changed. Can your mortgage broker review and see if there's a better rate out there? And by better, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the lowest, but something that's going to fit into your plan. Maybe your plan is to buy another property within the next 12 months. So you want your mortgage broker to start to work on releasing some equity in that. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, you've got to treat this like a business. Every single business has a plan. All of the items that I've listed there are part of your plan. You can feel free to send me an email, owen@thecleverinvestor.com.au.
You have been listening to the Clever Investor Podcast, proudly sponsored this week by Blue Wealth Property. Are you ready to start a new investment journey? Get in touch with the industry leaders, Blue Wealth Property. Blue Wealth have a proven track record in using research to identify growth markets, and Blue Wealth have supported thousands of Australians to buy the right property in the right market at the right time.